We need a red light.
Yeah,
I know
right?
we do.
We're good.
I mean, it's just a classic.
I know. On air, big on air.
Yeah. You lost your glasses.
I know. That's what happens when you're like doing 100 things before, you know. I think it's important to talk with people about what their process is and how their life goes and share things because maybe it'll stimulate somebody else then too.
We actually need to do a lot of that in this community.
Yes.
Yeah. We need to do a lot more of that, what you're doing. So
Fabulous. Let's get into it.
these
All right.
people, they make you work so hard.
Welcome to In the Act, a program on process and the creative life. Creativity does not just start and stop with artists. We all make aesthetic or guiding decisions. Our aim is to talk through the process and investigate how we choose to express ourselves and live creatively. And that is the subject of our show. Broadcasting from Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I am Erica Hunsinger. This is In the Act. And today's guest, we are with Alexandra Guevara.
Yep. Guevara.
Guevara.
Yep.
And I didn't know if you wanted, I didn't know if you wanted your whole name, your Meyer de Guevara.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm Alexandra Meyer in Bolivia, and here I am, Alexandra Guevara.
Gotcha.
By marriage.
I love that.
I decided they have the same name as my kids.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
Odd thing.
Right?
Yep.
Mom, wife, kids.
I know.
Social.
All of a sudden, you're the only person with a different name. What?
Yeah. That's a whole other thing, right? It's just such a...
Brazilians do it right.
Because you are...
Name is the name.
Because what?
Mom's name is the name.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I love that.
Because, mom is always mom.
Right. Makes sense to me.
That's a thing.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
And you're born in Bolivia.
Yeah.
And
funny enough, I'm born in Germany.
You were born in Germany.
Yep. But completely, fully raised in Bolivia.
Okay.
So I grew up in Bolivia. I got there when I was 3 months old.
Wow.
By a serendipitous event, I was born in Germany because I'm kind of half German, half Bolivian.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're fluent in Spanish, German, and English.
I was very, very fluent in German. Before learning English, I actually spoke a lot more German because I went to a full German school where we only spoke
in Bolivia.
Yep.
Wow.
Those things happen.
So I love that.
And then I had a teacher who would teach me English by listening to the Beatles.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
Wow.
So I started learning English with a slight British accent.
Oh, my gosh. I love that.
Yeah, so I had a Bolivian-German British accent.
Oh, my gosh.
Mm-hmm. But, I grew up in Bolivia, went to a German school where I really learned a pretty decent German.
Yeah.
But when I came here, that side of my brain that has to decide what language to use started mixing German and English. So if I go back to a place where people speak German, I need like a few weeks.
Yeah.
And German starts flowing again.
Oh, I bet. Of course, right? You use it or lose it sort of idea.
Yes. Kind of, yes.
Sure.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
It's like my brain is split in two. Spanish exists always because that's what I did forever. Mm-hmm. But the other one kind of has to make a decision.
Right.
What it is.
I mean, that's a lot of executive functioning happening to translate and to...
Yep. That's why I'm really bad in math. Because math and physics and chemistry I took in German.
Okay.
So it took a lot of translating before I could even get to the math part of things.
Oh, my gosh. That's so much work for your brain.
Yep.
That's a lot of brain training.
It's a lot. I mean, actually, when I moved here and I started having to only speak in English, I would have headaches. Like the first year, after the day was done, I would like lay in bed and go like,
I bet.
It hurts.
I bet. Of course.
Yes.
That makes absolute sense. And I don't think people talk about that they don't talk about the physical effects of really using your brain. And what would it look like to somebody who's not like translating something? Maybe it was like a huge day at work where there were tons of really high pressure things to manage and to translate for other people, not necessarily translate into, but to
make it easier for people.
Yeah, that's a lot. I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Oh, language is such a fascinating thing. And to me, I've been thinking a lot about that because coming here, being a communicator and an OCD communicator on top of that, right? Someone who really cares about language, my inability to fully express myself the way I would like to.
Yes.
Is painful.
Absolutely.
Right? So you have to really pay attention to how you're saying things, how you're writing things, what you're saying, how people are understanding what you're saying.
Right.
And that's a lot of effort.
Pressure, stress. Sure.
But it's also beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
It can be all of those things.
And enough. I was talking about that with a friend yesterday, I think. What helped me a ton was the radio.
Okay. Do you think that's from like the earlier time of like being trained to learn English through the Beatles? Like, do you think it was from like that?
But I think what's fascinating about the radio, and one of the reasons as a communicator that I love radio, right, is the ability to only use audio to push your imagination.
Yes.
Right. So only use language.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And allow you to create as many visuals as you want.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love video. I love audiovisual. But the radio has this beautiful ability to do everything with language.
Yeah. Communicate with language.
Just with words.
Yeah. So then your brain
and your
allows...
brain completes the picture.
Sure.
So yeah, I love I love NPR. So that's that.
But same. Yeah.
Because I was doing two things, learning things and learning language.
Learning things?
Things, whatever they were talking about, right? Reality, news, whatever.
Right.
But I also was listening to how they would say that, how they would express themselves, what words they were using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you translate that through then into Spanish for yourself while you were thinking about it?
At first. You know, it's weird. And I don't know if that's real, but it seems like you think in a language.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
But when you start speaking a different language, and I guess the earlier the better, but when you start, all of a sudden one day you wake up and you've been dreaming in English or you've been thinking in English.
Right.
Or all of a sudden you think in Spanglish.
Oh, yeah.
And you mix your language. I love Spanglish. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, you borrow words when you don't know how to say something. You use a different language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you also start thinking with no language because you realize that it's a different component when it's in your thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
Language
so
is
rich.
powerful.
And I think also, there are some words that words are so hard too because they don't always capture exactly what we mean, and other languages might capture something that, like, what is the German word for like pleasure through?
Or like Weltanschauung. When you say that, how do you say that in a different language?
Right. And it occupies a different understanding of the word or richness or something.
That's one of the beauties of English, actually. And I think what people do not necessarily admit, or maybe they do admit it, but it's English reflects the American society in a way, but that melting pot concept where you borrow from a lot of other languages and anglicize them.
Yes.
So they're now English.
Yeah.
But English has so many words.
Right.
Right? More words than a lot of words.
Huh.
Other languages do not have as many words. Spanish has less words than English.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yep. So that's one of the aspects that fascinates me about English. It's that you can say things with so many different words.
Wow.
Yeah. And some of them do not translate, like serendipity or, procrastinate doesn't exist in Spanish. So in Spanish, we're starting to borrow them, and we say procrastinando or serendipitoso, but it doesn't really.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. And that's creative.
It is perfect.
Right? The language is not static. It's dynamic, and it changes and evolves.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
Language is probably the most creative thing in the sense that we need to express ourselves. And when I say language, it could be, painting is a language, coding is a language, right?
Yes.
Everything is a language. It's a way of saying things or of expressing things. So, the power.
Oh my gosh, yeah, totally. And you're not only an expert from your development and life through experience and choices, but you're also what were you, a communication you're a communication specialist?
So I'm a strategist. So what I do most of my days as a consultant is I do branding, reputation, and identity from the communicational perspective.
And what does that mean exactly? Because I was trying to wrap my head around it a little bit, and I was looking forward to kind of getting into it a bit.
So most people who like the marketing language would say we develop brands.
Okay.
So we create a symbolic depiction of a company and then add value and meaning to it, right?
Right.
So logos and colors and stuff, that's the designers, but we are the strategists who define that, that symbol should mean this, what you're about, who you are, seems to be, the company that wants to change the world or make a ton of money.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the last part is why I don't like to depict or describe myself as a marketing person, but as a communication person.
Right.
Because I think marketing is there to sell, right?
Right.
I don't want to necessarily sell anything.
Right.
Capitalism is problematic in my personal view. So I prefer to be a person that is there to build bridges.
Yes.
And create perceptions and share opinions, right? So that's why I talk a lot more about identity, right?
Yeah.
The brand is an identity. Companies end up being kind of personas. That behave in certain ways, hopefully for good.
Right.
And I also work in reputation because one thing is what you project, and the other thing is what people experience, right?
Right.
So that's what I do.
Like self and other.
Right. Yeah. You are Erica, and you try to make sure people think this and this and that. Right. But when you interact with people have a differentness, not different, but an added or perception of who you are.
Absolutely.
Because they filter their perceptions through their own existence.
Right.
So then Erica is you and that perception.
Right. Which is terrifying and fabulous at the same time.
It is. It is, right?
But both it's on cool. a micro self level of how am I being experienced to others and how I experience myself. Also, and then the macro of like a company or
Yeah. I think, And I think at the personal level, that concept of your self-brand or your personal brand, right? It's a concept. I would prefer not to call it a brand, but identity,
same.
right?
Yeah, agree.
But at the level of a company, some of us believe that businesses, companies, entities, organizations should exist to benefit people and hopefully the world, like Earth, right?
Yeah.
So,
which is one of your driving factors. Like that's your, what I see you talk, what I hear you talk about, and you're trying to connect with people with growth and equity and diversity and for the health of individuals as well as the world, our Earth.
There's a dignified side of that, right? It's like it's about dignity. You exist in dignity.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you have the right to exist. Your existence is a fact. Life is in you as well as in everything that surrounds you. Yeah. So let's make it even more beautiful than that.
Well, that is incredibly beautiful.
Hopefully that's the way we should think.
It is,
yeah.
How did you get onto that path for yourself? Because it seems like such an elevated way of experiencing and like identifying the world. There's such a humanity and you said dignity, but there's this care and love involved. Like what do you think was?
I think we all have it in us. I think we're trained out of it rather than anything.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I don't know. I think we're all like that deep inside, and I think what makes it more or less, or more visible, or more active, or less, is the people you surround yourself with. I mean, your tribe. So when you start connecting with people who have a little bit more love for others, a little bit more empathy, a little bit more compassion, more compassion than empathy. And we've been thinking about those two words and their differences. You all of a sudden turn into that person that cares more about others. And then you connect with nature because it's just basically beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's that. I don't know if there's a path to this.
Yeah.
I think it's how you connect with people.
I love that.
Who you connect with.
Okay, welcome back. We're in the act. I'm Erica Hunsinger. We're here with Ale Guevara, and we are talking about, or you mentioned the difference between empathy and compassion, and I sort of shift between like sympathy and compassion, or sympathy and empathy, right? I don't necessarily like sympathy as much as I appreciate empathy, but I hadn't really put empathy and compassion up against each other in the same way. So can we dig into that a tiny?
So this is a conversation that we've been having with my husband, who is actually the one that brought it to me, because we both have been getting into, let's call it training, but it's learning about diversity, anti-racism, anti-oppression. We prefer to call it that. Others call it diversity, equity, and inclusion. But, opening yourself up to learn to other people's experiences and in order to understand other people's realities. And so empathy is this word that everybody is, using as a buzz thing, right? Everybody's like, empathy, you need to be empathetic. And it's a really cool concept that expresses your ability to walk on other people's shoes, right?
Sure.
In other people's shoes. So
Yeah.
in order to understand other people, you need to understand where they're coming from or what they're experiencing.
Right.
But there's some things that people have experienced that you can't understand.
Right.
Because you haven't gone through that. I mean, there's a lot of trauma and pain and anger and even beautiful feelings that you haven't experienced.
Right, exactly.
And you shouldn't need to experience those to be able to align with another person or feel
so
something for another person. So compassion is the ability to feel with.
Right.
Without having to fully understand.
Right.
So there's beauty in that word.
I love it. I love the word. I actually have it on a tag for my email as compassion breeds compassion.
Yep.
And that was by Dalai Lama.
So as a non-religious person, which I am an agnostic, I still like in some Bibles, right, are translated instead of love, they use compassion.
Oh.
And what I find interesting, so to me, it's not necessarily all the same because those are two words, but I like the idea of being able to feel something beautiful for another person and feel with them.
Yeah.
Without having to fully understand or agree.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that.
And I think that can be really hard to do.
I mean, to me, that's the thing. The ability to love someone, even if we don't understand what they went through.
Yeah.
Just by believing in what they're saying.
Yes. Right. And trusting their truth.
Yep.
And the fact that someone's sharing that with you is an honor as well.
It is, right?
Whatever that may be.
Yeah, and being positively open to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's...
And being present with it. And I think that's hard to do. That whole little, I mean, it sounds so nice.
It sounds nice.
but it's so hard. It's hard. It can be really challenging.
That's the path, right? I mean, that's the thing. Easy is not always the only answer.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be, right?
Yeah, it's like there's not an easy button for reality. So
right.
Yeah, I think I like that difference between empathy and compassion. I like the concept of empathy as try to, right? Try to put yourself, what would you do? And it's a good exercise for some things.
Yeah.
Like when we do communications, okay, what would if I were that person, what would I expect? What would I dream about? What would I hope for?
Right, sure.
But it's different than I care about that person because what that person experienced, I believe they experienced, and I love them. And so I trust that. Different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need more of that. And I think it's so much about like if you can, it's like, that old saying of like love yourself first and then you can love others. But I don't necessarily like that a lot because I think it's kind of hand in hand. It's not either or. But I do think that there are so many times that we lose compassion for ourselves.
Yep.
And then we're not able to allow for being compassionate with others.
Yep.
Or if we've been treated in a non-compassionate way without empathy, it's hard to then be present with others.
Oh, and there's so many people who love others without being able to fully love themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that do a lot more good for the others than they do for themselves.
Right.
Not necessarily what we would hope for people, but
right.
It's true. So,
yeah,
kindness comes in different shapes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great.
Words.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So in terms of the community, like, and being here, how do you think that, I don't know, how do you think that maybe we can communicate with each other differently to explore some of these like really simple but really big ideas of compassion and to connect more, to build more bridges, to allow for the dynamics of our community and the diversity of our community to help to create more of a weaving.
Yeah, a tribe.
A tribe, yeah.
So I think, Sheboygan is a interesting place where there's a lot of awesomeness and a lot of really painful realities.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a magic answer to that. I think part of what we don't do is we don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
We don't communicate, and maybe that's the communicator in me.
Yeah.
But I think our ability to experience ourselves in a real way, right?
Yeah.
I work a lot with I'm an activist. I work a lot with the Latinx community, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, the Latinx community doesn't really doesn't participate. It's so difficult to reach them.
Yeah.
They're invisible. I don't even know where they are. And it's like, exactly.
Huh.
You don't know them.
Right.
You don't know us. You don't talk to us.
Right.
You haven't been looking at the right place.
And you haven't made a first step to engage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And, the community, the Latinx community, doesn't immediately engage because they're the visitors. They're the outsiders, right? We are the ones dealing with how do we express this in a new language.
Right.
How do we hopefully not assimilate, but accept a different culture?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How are we validated, even though we don't fully understand how this works here, right? So it's a lot tougher for a visiting community or a newly integrated community, or for a different looking community, because not everyone in the Latinx community is new here.
Absolutely.
Some of them are older than life. But
right.
How do we belong?
Right.
And truth is, people don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And no matter how mad it makes us, we should start exchanging ideas, even if we don't like them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and I always think of like starting really small. Like I moved here from Chicago, and when I was like, in the grocery line, for example, and there's like 4 people ahead of me, I'm going to just like, oh, cool. I didn't see that brand of bread. Look at that. Like, that looks like really nice bread. Did you enjoy it? Or do you get it often? Right. Or just having like a very simple conversation with a stranger about maybe something that they got. And when I got to the grocery store here, and I would like just say, oh, some sort of small talk, I felt like I was an other. And that was not part of the culture exchange. Like when you're in the grocery line, you just don't talk to other people. There's like an isolation booth around people sometimes that I experienced when I moved. But I'm also white, that I'm coming in as a quote unquote white female into the community. So I'm like partially accepted in a different way, I think. Than
I guess we all have our slight differences that make us different in a way, and not so different or privileged in other ways.
Sure.
I mean, I'm a white presenting Latina, so until I speak, people don't know anything about me.
Sure.
When I speak, it's, she's not from here.
Right.
Let's treat her differently, or say some kind of microaggressive
Right.
little thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is true, but I think there's a lot that small places, smaller cities do that bigger cities do not do anymore, in the sense of bigger cities, you're a little bit less known, you're a little bit more anonymous, so
Sure,
your behavior
absolutely.
is not as visible, and you have a little bit more freedom to do things and behave
Agreed.
like yourself. But also, there's a ton more people, and you're going to find someone that thinks like you, and you're going
right.
to find your tribe right
Absolutely.
away. While in smaller places, you have to look hard for
Right.
those people.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we start having conversations.
Right.
With people who are a lot like us, or who think a lot like us, or who look a lot like us.
Yeah.
But then we need to expand.
Right.
And the people...
Poke here, a little poke there.
Yeah, the people like us that adhere themselves to the word activist, right? Which doesn't only means doing something actively.
Right.
Engaging actively.
Yeah.
Is we purposely look to engage, to talk to others, to learn about others' realities, right?
Yeah.
And advocate for the things we believe in.
Right. And that starts at such like a human small detail level, or can. Like, I feel like those are some, like, how do you start those things out if you can't like get into the bubble? So like being creative about finding those places to rub up against, to connect.
And that's where creativity plays such a huge role, because some of the things that connect you the most are based on, like, cooking and eating wonderful creative things.
Yeah. The arts, like music.
Like experiencing music and dance and movement.
Right.
And so many other things. I mean, reading things that are not from your own, that don't come from your exactly same experience.
Right.
Watching movies and, that depict realities that you're far, far, far detached from.
Sure.
Exposing yourselves to the creative thoughts of people who are not like you is a first thing.
Yeah.
But most people like a comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
They prefer to do, like, be with the people like me, do with the people like me, think like the people like me. And sometimes we even get afraid of stop thinking like the people like me, because it's dangerous or complicated or so many things. So,
and I think of creativity as sort of risk taking, and being, because there's I'm kind of like stuck in, this is just such an interesting conversation, but like there's a jump that you have to make to get unstuck from the comfort, right? That disequilibrium I've used to shift your way of thinking or interaction or something. That's a creative act, I think, to be dynamic and allow for some of the things that don't feel comfortable and talking about, I think some of the easiest vehicles for that are the arts, right? Like reading a book, or going to the art center to see a show, or to Paradigm, or the Weil Center, that whatever, or expanded from Sheboygan out, but or watching movies. You said of just tuning into something that's not of you, to incorporate new.
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking about that before coming here. What's creativity, or how does it exist? When does it exist in its best form, right? And creativity is, to me personally, not for everyone, I guess, but to me personally, linked to a deep sense of freedom. And that is not necessarily freedom like we describe it usually, but freedom from, for an instance, making mistakes, right?
Yeah.
I think the ability to make mistakes is what takes you to discovering new things.
Absolutely.
And loving yourself.
Right.
All the things, right?
I mean, isn't that how penicillin was developed? Like there was a mistake and now
and also that, but again, just like with how do you get to a point where you believe that compassion is a necessary outcome and a necessary you and your identity?
Yeah.
I think we are trained out of creativity. But we're born creative. We're born curious. We're born into the need to explore, right?
Yes.
The need to misstep and correct.
Yes.
And restart.
Yes.
And so linked to how do we start connecting better is we need to take the risk to talk to each other, not like each other, figure out how to better like each other.
Yeah.
But get rid of a few things that make us afraid of looking bad, being perceived wrongly or weirdly.
Yeah.
Or,
right.
And I think the things that we describe as creative, right? Like the arts or the cultural or the culinary world are those that encourage people to be more creative because mistakes there are not so visible. I mean,
or as consequential.
What is a mistake in a painting? I mean, it depends, right? I mean, it could be a lot of things.
Right.
And what is a beautiful painting?
It's not hurting anybody.
I mean, a beautiful painting is something that some people like and some people hate. And,
right.
So it's less complicated.
Yeah.
Well, with us human beings being perceived the wrong way, the way we didn't intend, so that gap between our perceived image and what we think we are
yes,
is hurtful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complicated. So I think we need to be a little bit freer to express ourselves.
Absolutely.
And to connect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Creativity. Hard to be creative. Yeah. Sometimes I don't feel creative at all. And that's maybe because we defined what creative looks like, right? Yeah.
Ooh, let's get into that. Welcome back in the act. I'm Eric Hunsinger. We're here with Ali Guevara, talking about you just expressed yourself and said, sometimes I don't feel creative.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't think I'm a creative person.
Yeah.
Because we define creativity as a thing, right? I mean, only artists or only superstars are creative.
Absolutely.
Only, Nobel Prizes are creative.
Yeah. The standard in which we put ourselves up against for the use of the word creative is astounding.
It is. I mean, we do that with everything, right?
Oh, sure.
We elevate everything to a level of impossible. But, I think most people don't see themselves as creative creatures, right?
No.
And one of the things we like to do when we do communication strategy is we brainstorm, right?
Yes.
And
it's one of my favorites.
It's one of my favorite things, right? Because there's no mistakes, right? And let's as an example, let's talk about brainstorming for a brand, or for a brand name, right?
Yeah.
And those brainstorming exercises are about coming up with the silliest, weirdest, most out of the box, or like sometimes the dumbest concepts, right?
Right.
And it starts like a really serious process, and then we end up laughing about the bananas things
because there's no judgment on it. The brainstorm thing is like not about choosing. It's
no
not
limits,
about
right
making decisions. Right. It's just about the free form flow of ideas.
And I love them. First of all, because you connect with the people it's like we're having fun.
Totally.
In a brainy way.
Right. Yeah.
We're not partying, we're not drinking,
Right.
we're just thinking.
Yeah.
And that's a huge connection.
Totally.
But also there's no mistakes.
No.
Right?
Right.
And that's when I come back home and I think, oh, I'm really creative. I don't know what I created, but I had the most funny or out of the whatever ideas.
Yeah.
And that's when you think, well, I can actually be incredibly creative.
Yes.
As soon as I let go of all the things that limit me.
Oh my gosh. I just had this, God, we need so much more of that in our lives.
Yep.
Of just the ability to spew these creative, don't judge it, just let it go, just keep that flow going, and that I mean, your whole body changed when I'm looking at you and, seeing your face change, talking about this, we're excited because it has that joy inside that is released, I think.
Life needs to be joyful. I mean, it's not for everyone. Not everybody is born into a place where you have the privilege of having that opportunity. Not everyone. But I think
absolutely
all people deserve and can have a little bit of joy and a little bit of a creative space where they can be themselves and not themselves.
Yes, try on different outfits.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you can just explore.
Totally.
And to me, creativity is, I love the intellectual aspects of life, right?
Yeah.
I think the physical, the real aspects of life are wonderful, and I love to explore them, but our brains are such a powerful machine.
Yeah.
And brains have so very little limits.
Yeah.
Actually, right?
We don't even
put
know.
The limits,
right?
And others put the limits, but
sure.
We don't even know what they're capable of.
What do we use? What is it that we use 7 to 8% of our brains
that's
or something?
That's not necessarily true, but
it's probably.
But we limit ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't use it, or maybe we don't use it the right way, or maybe we could use it more, or maybe we just could have fun.
Yeah. How do we expand? How does it get explored differently?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the templates that we're working within, that we're defined by, the everyday that we need to get through, sort of cordons off a lot of space for us to feel that freedom, that creativity that I think that you're talking about.
One of the main limits, one of the big barriers to creativity, is productivity.
What do you mean by that?
Because we need to produce stuff. We need to produce thoughts. We need to produce money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We have to be productive.
Right.
And a lot of the creative stuff is not necessarily seen as productive.
Yeah.
I mean, brainstorming is a cool thing if it ends up becoming a logo.
Right.
But that space where you're brainstorming and your brain is expanding and having fun is not seen as productive by society.
No, it is not.
Right? And it's not valued.
It's not valued.
So an artist is only valuable if the painting or the sculpture or the dance has been tagged with a prize.
Right.
So that is not true.
It's not. And it's the whole process of it. It's that whole life.
Right? And we start filtering. So based on productivity and on money, right?
Yeah.
Price.
Right.
The new concept of value is price, right? So based on that.
The new concept of value is price. I just had to repeat it because I was.
Oh, I heard a podcast with this incredible economist from Italy. This woman, I can't remember her name now, but I will.
Yeah.
Who talks about how value changed in history.
Sure.
And how now value is expressed only exclusively by price.
Yeah.
Which is complicated.
Right.
Because originally, and it wasn't good already, it wasn't a good definition back then, but it was better because it would be that value was measured by what it adds to society, to the community.
Right. Exactly.
But now it's only measured by price.
Right. There are so many artists that I come in contact with who one of the first things that they'll say is like, "Oh yeah, I'm I did X amount of work or whatever, and I sold 90% of it." It's like, okay,
right?
Good for you. I'm glad it hit your bottom line in a way that felt good, but like, what's your work? What are you doing?
Yeah.
What's the process?
How are you connecting?
How is it? Yeah. So talking about it in terms of value and not price is such an important thing, I think.
And value has so many filters, right?
Sure.
I mean, in different cultures, different expressions have different meanings. Like a painting that's dull and black and gray and has a meaning here and a different meaning in India.
Totally.
Because color has different ways of speaking to people culturally, right?
Culturally, symbolically,
it's very complicated because now value is very occidental for art.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And people need to look a certain way, do certain things, behave certain ways, paint certain things.
Right.
And the people who define what's valuable or not is the people who can pay for it.
Right.
Right?
Which is so messed up.
If I like that food and I'm able to pay $100 for it, it's top chef level.
And now it's valuable.
Right? Now that person is going to be famous.
Right.
Right? But that food I don't care about a lot because culturally it doesn't agree with my taste.
Right.
So it has no space in my community.
Right.
That's a problem.
That is a problem.
Yeah. So in a community who likes mostly bland, which is okay. I mean, it's a taste. It's a way of doing. And culturally, there are reasons why certain cultures prefer bland foods.
I don't know what it is.
I was reading about that
I don't align with it, so I don't know.
There were a lot of reasons why they would eliminate spice and stuff to make it as bland or simple as possible. And I was reading about that, but I don't have the answers right now.
Fascinating.
But yeah, so it's a cultural thing, and it's the way it evolved in those cultures.
Wow.
Versus the way it evolved. Like the use of spice and such, in many cases, has to do with the inability to refrigerate, the need to overcome certain underlying flavors, stuff like that, right?
Sure, yep.
And so a culture that grew up with a lot of hot, spicy stuff, like my culture.
Yes.
Comes to visit a culture that grew up with a lot of bland, simple food.
Yeah.
We don't agree at all.
Right.
But who defines which of those two restaurants is the best? The people who are willing to pay for it. Who are the people who are willing to pay for it? The people who have the money.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the thing with productivity and money, price.
Yeah.
That we put a price on creativity.
Right.
And I would
how do we retool? How do we redo that?
Doesn't have a value in the sense of capitalism, right?
Oh, absolutely. Correct. Right. Yeah, I agree.
But it's still awesome and makes people happy.
Right.
So that's that.
How do we shift those things? I just get really frustrated, I think. I tend to shut down a tiny bit. I feel the emotion and then shut down a tiny bit. And I'm always looking for that next, the wave of then how do we act or help to change or identify, talking is identification as well, right? So how do we identify these things and then try and use the information that we have to instill change?
It's complicated, right? Because on one side, everybody needs to survive within this model where we exist.
Of course.
But on the other hand, if we don't stop adding a price tag to things and feelings and thoughts, people are not going to be able to be who they are.
Right. Because then your worth and your value is based on a price tag.
And on other people's perceptions.
Of course. Right.
Your way of expressing yourself is just your way of expressing, is what you know about yourself and about the tools you can use.
Right.
But some people don't like them.
Yeah.
And if those are the people making the decisions, you're not worth it.
Yeah.
Which is wrong in so many levels, right?
Right.
And that's a little bit of what happens with the ability to connect here. It's like, these people are coming for our jobs. These people are coming to take away our productivity, our ability to survive.
Right.
These people are coming with different mindsets. They don't like what we believe in. They don't like what we eat. They don't like what we like.
Right.
It is all, in a way, semi-true.
Sure.
Everybody has the same right to work, to think, to create.
Yeah.
The problem is we need to start accepting different approaches and stop adding a price to it, or an intrinsic, a value, right? It's like, no, they're not coming for your job. They're coming for a job.
Right.
No, they don't eat disgusting hot food. They eat different foods. Yeah. You should try them all.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And it's that, a little bit of risk taking, a little bit of experimentation, and
less.
And I think you're so right about the some of the pathways to do that is through creative approaches.
Yep.
Through the creative. Yeah.
I think so. Effectiveness is important. I don't care about efficacious, right? But I care about effective. And yes, there's ways to model things or structure things in a way that the outcome is more effective to benefit someone or someone's. At the same time, if we, in order to be effective and more so efficacious, we do a lot of templating, right? A lot of structuring. Creativity dies.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying structuring is opposite to creativity. Okay. I'm saying that adopting one structure, one model, one format.
Oh,
right?
100%.
When I think of my job in communication strategy, they're models that you adopt.
Yeah, right.
If you adopt them and stop thinking, you kill creativity, and eventually the whole thing is gone. Right.
I mean, this is my analogy, I was a preschool teacher for a very long time, and crafts or art teacher crafts that some adopt, of here's the craft that we're going to make. It's a caterpillar made of egg carton. Everybody can relate to this. And this is how it's going to look when you're done.
Yep.
To create that is not creative.
Nope.
It's not. You're doing a craft.
You're productive.
You're producing it, and you're trying to produce it just like someone else's. Yep. But that's not a creative act.
Nope.
A creative act is giving them all the same ingredients and showing maybe multiple versions of what could be done with it to create an abstract sculpture, a caterpillar maybe, a landscape, taking it apart and it becoming like plant fodder for a plant, like who knows?
Yeah.
But those acts are creative. Yep. The choices, Yeah,
we sometimes mix and confuse techniques with outcomes.
Yeah.
So techniques, you want to show someone how to use a technique, and you might show them the end process.
Absolutely.
So they know how to get there.
Right.
But that's not creativity. It's
that's right.
Education.
Yes.
And then you say, use that technique and do whatever you want.
Yes.
That's creativity, right?
Yes. Right.
And in modern times, productivity and techniques are more important than creativity and outcomes.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake, the product is not going to look the same.
Right.
And if it needs to be 200,000 of the same,
right,
you're not allowed to be creative.
Right.
And it might be okay in that, but at the same time, there needs to be a space where you can be creative.
Yeah.
And where things don't look the same.
Right.
Yeah. I guess there's a balance.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think right now our balance is more on the productive, efficient, side than in the take your time.
Yeah.
Think about it, explore, be curious.
Yes.
Find a different way.
Yes.
Not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
Because we don't survive on that.
Right. But we do need that balance in there. We need to put it in there somehow.
Yeah. Creativity. I think that's why I think creativity requires a certain level of freedom.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
This time went by so fast.
It did, right? It was awesome, though. Yeah, it was a super conversation.
Yeah. If people want to get a hold of you, Ale, how can they contact you?
My email address is perfect.
And could you share that with us right now?
Yeah. Oh, gosh, it's going to be tough. So, Alexandra with an X, .Meyer, Meyer, .g@gmail.com.
Great. And that'll also be on our
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Everybody can write to me. I'm always happy to read.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ale.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Hey.
In the Act is produced in the studios at Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. More information on the web at meadpl.org.